Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. I'm Brandon Ware. You're watching Angel 65, my channel for all things music related, music posts, and music reviews. Today is my first official review of a Genesis product. We are looking at The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway 50th Anniversary Edition. This is the CD and Blu-ray edition, not the LP and Blu-ray edition because it was too expensive. I tend to avoid box sets that have live LPs in them that are like 3 to 6 sides. If it comes in there as a bonus and there's other things that I want, sure, I'm interested. I do appreciate that there was 2 versions offered because typically, unless it's a contemporaneous live album, meaning like a live album that was actually released at the time, I very rarely tend to go back to those things, and I get really upset when they create box sets with a big long live album on CD and on vinyl because I very rarely use the vinyl of that. So I just went for the CD version, and I'm glad I did because it's a shame that my first Genesis review has to be not a great one because I am not super impressed with this. To be completely honest, I wasn't expecting a miracle here, but I was pretty excited for the Atmos mix, and we'll get to that, but overall I find this package overpriced and underwhelming. Starting with the book, I found the essay very boring. There was little to no new information in there. Much of it is just repeated from what was spoken in the reissue interview that was on the green box set version of The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. So you get very little new context. If anything, you sense that there's a lot of quotations and stuff left out because I think the animosity between the members has probably increased with time, and so there's very little new information there. The photos were really cool. I did enjoy that. I guess a lot of them are available elsewhere, but most of them, the stuff from Headley Grange, I had not seen before, so that was pretty cool. Alright, so the audio, the remaster, and the new Atmos mix. Well, as far as the remaster goes, I was looking forward to having a remastered version of the original album, because when it comes to my Genesis collection on CD, I only previously had The Lamb, the 2008 mix with the box set. Otherwise, when I'm listening in stereo, I usually go back to my Atco pressing, which is a used pressing that I bought. It was only the second Peter Gabriel era Genesis album that I ever bought, and it took me quite a while to get into the album, but I think that pressing sounds really good, and so I tend to go back to it pretty frequently. The Atmos mix, I have to admit right off the bat that I found this a major letdown. I found it really muddy, really confusing. Some songs had big low end and others seemed to lack any low end at all. It felt like my subwoofer was not doing anything at times. I found the spacing rather weird. I found parts of it very gimmicky, stuff just floating back and forth, where that was not happening in the original mix or the 2008 Nick Davis 5.1 mix. It just felt really gimmicky and muddy and strange, and there was also parts included that I'm near positive were not in the original mixes at all, or if they were extremely quiet, basically unnoticeable. There's some strange harmonies and strange instrumental parts happening. There's some weird glitches with the mix too. For example, the transition from Back in New York City to Hairless Heart, it completely fades out and then starts up again, whereas that is a seamless crossfade in the original mixes and the 2008 mixes. And the ending portion of In the Cage, that kind of lo-fi section before it transitions to the Grand Parade of Lifeless Packaging, the tape hiss there is unbelievably loud. It just, all of a sudden, there's this very loud hiss, which disappears suddenly as it moves into the next song. So overall, I found this Atmos mix, which is really the reason I bought this, extremely disappointing. This is probably the biggest letdown of an Atmos mix I've heard thus far. I really did not find it engaging. I found it gimmicky. Um, I will say there was some cool light shone on maybe things that I didn't notice as much or things that were a little further back in the mix. I would say Steve Hackett's guitar in places is brought forward a lot more, which is cool. And so, as an alternate way to hear the album, I guess it has value, but it certainly is not a definitive mix of the album. I much prefer the Nick Davis 2008 5.1 mix. I know a lot of people are gonna call me a heathen for that because those mixes are notoriously brick-walled, very loud, very compressed. But I do think his 5.1 mix of the Lamb takes away some of the just outright harshness of the stereo mix and provides a lot of detail and a lot of power, particularly on moments like the keyboard solo of In the Cage and the big synth gliss in Back in New York City. Like, these are things that just in the original mix are big moments, but the 5.1 mix, they're huge moments, and I was really looking forward to that in the Atmos mix and didn't get it. So overall, I found this Atmos mix a major letdown. If you are interested in buying this purely for that Atmos mix and you already have the 2008 5.1 mix, I would say save your money. I didn't find it an improvement at all. In fact, I find it a downgrade. The fact that there was more space in the mix didn't help to save the fact that the overall sound quality of it was just not great. And I didn't find the remaster of the original album particularly satisfying either. I think my original Atco LP pressing of it sounds much better than this new remaster does. And things don't get better with the Shrine Auditorium either, because I didn't notice any improvement over the 98 master that was in the archive box set. It didn't really sound any different to me. There is a couple tidbits. At the end of the Chamber of 32 Doors, you get another Gabriel spoken interlude, which, to my memory, was not on the archive box set. I certainly don't remember it being there. Where he narrates the second half of the album, and that was missing from the original one. What you do get here, the only other new things besides Atmos, are the 3 Headley Grange demos, which are interesting, but although it's the first time I've heard them, I know that they've been available in bootleg quality for a long time, and they were already pretty bad sound quality. Interesting alternate approaches you can hear, but nothing to write home about. And the encore tracks for the Shrine Auditorium, which I think were taken from the stereo mixdown tape that was released to radio, because they certainly don't have the fidelity of the rest of the concert. And sure, it was nice to hear, but we already have plenty of versions of Watcher of the Skies and the musical box that are much better than these. So overall, quite a major disappointment of a box set. The book was disappointing. The remaster was disappointing. The Shrine Auditorium was not useless because we already have the vast majority of the concert in pretty much the same sound quality as we have here. And it is in fact the same version, the same mixes with Peter Gabriel's overdubbed vocals, so nothing new there. And the Atmos mix was a letdown. So overall, I have to say I'm very disappointed by this set. Had it been half the price, $50, I would consider it a reasonable purchase. For $100, this is too much money to spend on something that I consider a subpar product. I'm even debating sending it back. Unfortunately, I have used the download code because I wanted the Shrine Auditorium in FLAC lossless, and that is what I listened to. I didn't listen to the CD version, but like I said, I didn't notice any improvement, and in fact, there was a mistake in the downloads. The metadata for Grand Parade of Lifeless Packaging and Back in New York City are switched, and they are switched in the track order. Now, it would be easy to just rename the file to put them back in the right order, but as I was listening to it, it showed Grand Parade of Lifeless Packaging on my player, but I was hearing Back in New York City, and sure enough, the two songs were reversed, metadata and all. So just small little annoyances like that are not deal breakers by any means, but it certainly doesn't help this. Yeah. For people that dislike the the Nick Davis remixes, I say that you really should seek those box sets out and give them a chance. The only album that I think suffered as a result of the remixes in 2007 and 2008 was A Trick of the Tail. I prefer the stereo mix over the 5.1 and especially the new stereo remix. But every other album, the stereo mix, if you don't like how compressed and how harsh it is, take it or leave it. The 5.1 mixes, though, are generally speaking phenomenal. They are outstanding. The way things are spaced out in the room, the detail, the clarity, and particularly the low-end punch of all those mixes is fantastic. And some albums sound completely revitalized and given new life. In fact, it was because of the remix, initially the stereo version and eventually the 5.1, that I fell in love with not this album, but Wind and Wuthering, which became one of my favorites after I heard the remix, because the original mix is kind of flat and uninspiring. Now that I've become such a fan of the album, I do enjoy the original mix, but I think the remix is what really got me into that record in particular. I definitely prefer those 2008 remixes. I think Genesis nailed it the first time with Nick Davis at the helm, and I don't see any reason to go back and redo everything. So now that I've heard this, I'm hoping that we don't get any more of these Genesis Super Deluxe versions, because this one was quite underwhelming. And of course, one more thing about the 2008 version that you don't get here is the visuals. The visuals of the slides and some concert photos and videos of them performing in sync with the album while it plays in 5.1 really adds an interdimensional quality to it. It really adds so much to the experience, almost as if you're at the show watching it live or watching a movie of the album. And the fact that that's missing here, it's just a white screen with the track list on it while you're listening. I knew that going into it, but it's still, you know, you lose a lot in that experience. The visual component of the 2008 5.1 mix actually adds a huge quality to it. So overall, if you're on the fence about getting this, I would say if you already have the archive box set, have heard Shrine Auditorium, and have the 2008 5.1 mix, give this a miss. This is a waste of time. If it comes down in price and gets to maybe $50, I know that's a pipe dream. It'll never be that cheap. But if you can find it for an extremely low price, then yeah, go for it. Because the packaging is nice and it's a cool little set to have. But if you're interested in the Atmos mix and seeing if Shrine Auditorium or the new remaster sounds any better, I would say there's better ways you can spend your money. Save up some cash. See if you can find a copy of the green box set, because it's still out there. I got mine used like 10 years after it was out of print, and I didn't pay an obscene amount of money for it. So if you can find it, you know, go seek that out. Seek out all 5 of the box sets. In fact, all 5 of them are phenomenal. This is really the first Genesis box set where they've completely let me down. And so, rating. Because the price should be half what it is, this gets 1 star out of 5. 1 star out of 5. I admit The Lamb has never been my all-time favorite Genesis album, but it is one that I still really enjoy coming back to, and I think this does a disservice to Peter Gabriel's last hurrah with the band. So that's all I have to say about that one. If you disagree, that's fine. If you got a lot out of it and think the Atmos mix is an incredible revelation, good for you. I disagree. I think, in hindsight, I would have saved my money on this one. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. Bye.